Okay, we'll start with this argument here, and maybe you want to pause the video and try this yourself. Okay, so we have our two premises, B or C, not C, first, and we have them labeled, cited as assumptions. And then next, what we want is to use on lines 1 and 2 or elimination. So that gives us B. And then last, on line 3, we want to use or introduction. That will give us B or A, which is the conclusion that we're after. Okay, next I want to do this one. Okay, so here are our two premises. Then the next thing we want to do is get B or C. Oops. By, on line 1, doing and elimination. That is ampersand elimination. Then next we can, on lines 2 and 3, do or elimination. So that will give us C, since we have B or C here and not B here. Then next, what's our conclusion? We want D or C. So then from this, we can just go right to our conclusion. From line 4, we can do or introduction, wedge introduction, and get D or C, which is the conclusion that we need. Okay, so here we have three premises. This one before the first comma, then this thing here, then not C. Here's our turnstile, and I ran out of room, so this is the conclusion that we want here. Okay, so our premises are if D and F, then A or B. And we label that as an assumption, cited as an assumption. Next, C or D and F. And then our third premise is not C. So we have those, and we want to get to A or B. Okay, so it looks like the first thing we want to do here is get D and F. And we can do that by taking 2 and 3 and or elimination. Since we have C or D and F, and here we have not C, so we know that D and F has to be the case. Okay, then once we have D and F, we can get what we want, our conclusion A or B, by using lines 1 and 4 for the conditional elimination. That is the arrow elimination. Here we have the antecedent of our conditional statement, so we know that we can bring down the consequent on its own line. Okay, that gives us the conclusion we're after, A or B. Okay, this is the last one I want to do here. So we have two premises. If A, then B or C. A and not C. And then our conclusion is B or not D. All right, so the first thing we want to do here, I think, is get A and not C on separate lines. So we can take line 2 and do and elimination. For both of sides of the conjunction. So we have A and not C on their own lines. Then the next thing, okay, so we have A and if A, then B or C. So that's lines 1 and 3. We can do conditional elimination, that is arrow elimination, and get B or C. Okay, and we have, okay, so here in line 4 we have not C, and then we have the disjunction B or C. So since we know that not C is the case, is true, then we also know that B has to be true. So that can be by itself. That is taking 4 and 5 and or elimination, wedge elimination. Okay, and then our conclusion that we're after is B or not D. And so that only requires us to take, actually put it here, so line 6, or introduction. So we can take our B, wedge, and anything we want. So we'll just add the not D there. So our conclusion, B or not D, comes just from this line here. Okay, now for this I also want to give you the assumption set. And I'll just do this. So the assumption set keeps track of which assumptions we're using to get what we have on each line. So for the actual assumptions that we have, that is lines 1 and 2, we just label them as 1 and 2. Then for line 3, we're using assumption 2. So that's a 2 there. Same for line 4. Okay, to get B or C, we had to use this and this, so that's a 1 and a 2. To get the B, we had to use 1 and 2 again. And lastly, 1 and 2. Okay, so the assumption set should look like this. Again, if I haven't gone over this in class, or if I haven't spent much time going over it in class, don't worry about it too much, but it is something we'll eventually need to understand, and you need to have these in any case to use the proof checker. So I want you to have this proof complete so that you can maybe do that. Okay.